Thank you. Welcome to the show. My guests today say they might be headed back to lockup if they don't get their love lives resolved.
I wanted to ask, maybe, you could be my girlfriend.
Well, Brad, I have to tell you, I'm a man. And our show is as silly, crazy, outrageous, sometimes as stupid as you can get.
I'd like to take this opportunity to, frankly, apologize for everything I've ever done in television. I am so sorry. I have ruined the culture. And, I just hope hell isn't that hot. I burn real easy. I'm very light complected. I hope you all pray for me, because if I get to heaven, you're all going.
The Jerry Springer Show is so ingrained in American pop culture as it dominated TV for decades, but it left a dark mark on American talk show television and is probably one of the first to create sensationalist content that pushed ethical boundaries to the absolute extreme. To put simply, it was insane. But I think the best word to describe the Jerry Springer Show is exploitive. It was a show that fed off our base emotions that left the audience both disgusted but also incredibly intrigued to want to watch more. It really pushed the boundaries of its genre at that time, and it was basically tabloid personified into a TV show. The infamous Jerry chant was born, becoming the most iconic feature of the program. But it didn't start this way. Jerry was mostly known as a TV news anchor in Chicago, as well as a lawyer and a former mayor of Cincinnati, before entering the world of talk shows. He was a well-mannered kind of dude, and when the show started, it was a tame, boring talk show that took itself very seriously, talking about issues like gun control, healthcare, and homelessness. But it wasn't making any real mark, with the likes of Oprah dominating the market. The show was more political, and in fact during filming they actually had to grab members of the public from the street to fill the audience, which wasn't exactly a good sign at that time. So they knew they needed a change, or they could be potentially cancelled as the views dwindled away. And this is when producer Richard Dominic came in. For Richard, all that mattered was getting views, and he didn't care what it took. Richard took the show to the sensationalist tabloid trash it became, which made sense because he himself worked in the tabloid business industry, and they're not exactly known for having good moral decision-making capabilities. And I think we can all agree that tabloids in general are a cancer on our society. So Richard wanted dramatic confrontations with outrageous, over-the-top storylines. And to his credit, despite the network not being happy with the type of content they were making on their network, the show, after a few years, grew exponentially. So much so that it knocked the queen of daytime television herself, Oprah, off her top spot. And now Oprah was never a fan of the show either. In fact, she called it out for its exploitation of people and thought the show was more of a circus than anything else. And I doubt she ever thought, as well as Jerry and the producers of the Jerry Springer Show, that she would be dethroned by the very show that she criticized. As the host, Jerry Springer became one of the highest paid figures in daytime television during the show's peak. Springer negotiated several multi-million-dollar contract renewals throughout his tenure on the show. These deals reflected the show's ratings, of course, at a highly successful rate, and its ability to draw in huge advertising revenue. And at its height, the show was pulling in millions of viewers every day, making Springer an invaluable asset to NBCUniversal. And at its peak, he earned an average around $8 million a year. He was on top of the world, and he was thoroughly enjoying it. The show lasted nearly 4,000 episodes, airing 5 days a week, which put a huge amount of pressure on the producers, who had to work crazy hours, often sleeping in the office as they hunted down people with the craziest stories like love triangles, family feuds, and even incest. Richard put his staff under huge pressure to deliver week in and week out, and of course this created a huge amount of tension and problems for the producers, who effectively had no life outside of the show. They weren't too concerned though about the moral ethics of what they were doing, even to this day, and no topic was off limits. The only thing that mattered was getting the next story out. Once they found a story, they would fly the guests out, get them nice and drunk the night before, and then have them on the show the next morning. The wildest part to me was how the producers coached their guests. They would have them get very, very aggressively angry. They would shout at them, scream at them, rile them up, coach them on how exactly they should interact with the person they're going to be with on the stage. By the time they start shooting, the guests were so angry and aggressive that it resulted in these huge explosive arguments that often went violent, which was exactly what the producers wanted. They wanted every single episode to include violence because it was attention grabbing. Conversations were treated like war rather than discussion. Guests also seemed to believe that going on the show would somehow solve their problem. But a lot of the time, the headings that they used for each episode didn't match what was actually happening, and guests didn't find out what way the show was going to be manufactured until they were on the stage most of the time. The audience would laugh and gawk at these marginalized groups too, pushing stereotypes that were harmful, and guests often fought over really weird things like fetishes and taboos. But there was also times that they were just outright racist or sexist, and the show encouraged it because it was entertaining. And if the guests didn't go along to what the producers wanted, the guests were also threatened by the producers, basically claiming that they would not pay for their flights home. And a lot of these people, if they didn't go along with it, would be stranded in Chicago because they couldn't afford to even get there and get back if they lived in middle America, for example. But Jerry, he didn't actually do anything to help anyone. In fact, he would just rile them up more, being combative, belittling them, because he wanted an explosive reaction because it made good TV. He didn't care, and he didn't think his show was even being exploitive.
I am hosting a show about outrageousness. Most of the subjects that perhaps you and I are interested in, or maybe a lot of your viewers are interested in, are not outrageous. We do represent, in the way we live, probably mainstream America.
He himself had some controversy for having a threesome with porn stars who were actually guests on the show, when the photos were leaked to the press. This forever changed the image of Jerry for both the producers as well as the fans of the show. He did not come across as wholesome and like a father figure anymore, but it did not affect the viewership, and the show continued to thrive despite what happened. One of the most infamous clips that we've seen on the show was a man who had left his wife and kids to marry a horse. So yeah, like, that's a pretty fucked up episode to air, and of course when it did air, it was like pretty much banned automatically because it was promoting bestiality. Americans' reaction to it was disgust, of course, but they're also incredibly curious. It became nationwide news at the time, but the show was also heavily criticized for showing this person on TV. Other infamous guests that they had on the show was a woman by the name of Nancy Campbell, and she was kind of portrayed as like the mistress that was trying to get her ex-husband back. Her ex-husband had moved on, and she came onto the show because she wanted to rekindle what she had with him. She wasn't aware that she was going to be branded as this mistress coming in to ruin a marriage. And of course, as the show went on, it was clear that Jerry was trying to escalate the situation. But luckily, Nancy was too smart for him and refused to take the bait and simply walked off the stage to Jerry's disgust. But one of the issues with the show is that they don't care about what happens to the people after the taping is done. They create all this anger and tension for TV, and then they send people on their way. And there's consequences to that. And what happens to Nancy next, Jerry nor the producers would ever take any responsibility for, which was when Nancy would later be murdered by her ex-husband, who was on the show, quite brutally beaten to death. Now, could this have happened without them being on the Jerry Springer show? Potentially. But did Jerry and their producers help the situation in any sort of way? No. In fact, they created more anger and tension between the couple. Both Nancy and her ex-husband were exploited and manipulated for the entertainment value of the show, and it escalated into this sad outcome. And Jerry would forever claim it wasn't the show's fault, and that's the thing with Jerry. He would defend the show no matter what, because he felt it was justified. He thought it was a silly little show, and he didn't think it could do any wrong, and he never would admit fault. And I believe he is to blame, and the producers are to blame, or at least take some responsibility for the outcome of that situation. Now, by the 2010s, the show began to lose its viewership. Our audience became more consciously aware of the exploitation of the guests and began to see the show as outdated. The show is also often accused of being scripted, although strictly speaking, it wasn't scripted. They did obviously manipulate and exploit the guests to get them to a certain level to cause tension and fights on the stage. The last episode aired in 2018, and it put an end to this sensationalistic entertainment that had taken over the world of talk shows. Jerry himself actually in later years would admit his regret of the show, feeling like he deserves to rot in hell for what he had done.
I'd like to take this opportunity to frankly apologize for everything I've ever done in television. I am so sorry. I have ruined the culture. And, I just hope hell isn't that hot. I burn real easy. I'm very light complected. I hope you all pray for me, because if I get to heaven, you're all going.
Over the years, Jerry deflected criticism and pled ignorance to what the producers were up to, but I wouldn't let him off the hook that easy. He knew what was going on, I guarantee it, and he allowed it. He loved the fame and the wealth, so he simply looked the other way. Even one of the security guards that worked on set started his own carbon copy of the Jerry Springer Show called The Steve Wilkos Show, which started in 2007 and has over 3,000 episodes, which is still running to this day. So it's sad to think that, like, despite the fact Jerry Springer Show ended, there's still someone that is doing the exact same thing and it's still getting views to this day. The Jerry Springer Show thrived of exploitation and manipulation of people who were going through deeply personal, difficult times. They were riled up, pressured, and emotionally manipulated to go out there guns blazing. They were ridiculed, belittled by Jerry, and laughed at by the audience who looked down at them. And yes, some of the things the guests were on for were insane, but some had actual proper issues, and we could all sympathise with that. But Jerry Richards and the producers done nothing to help. And ironically, Jerry would end every single episode saying something like, "Take care of yourselves and each other."
Till next time, take care of yourself and each other.
He did not take care of the people on the show. He did not care about the people on the show. I am so glad the show is dead. It's a very dark part of TV history that I'm sure a lot of Americans would love to forget. But I think it's something that will be forever ingrained in their pop culture, forever be remembered. And I'm sure Jerry, who passed away in 2023, reflectively would not want to be remembered for that show, but that's what he's going to be always remembered for. Not his politics, not his time on news TV, but for the disgusting, manipulating show that did not deserve the time that it got on TV. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching as always. Please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't enjoy the video, like, share and subscribe anyway, that'd be nice. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Have you ever watched Jerry Springer Show? Do you believe it was exploitative, or do you think I'm just being dramatic and over the top? I think it's a reflection on American culture and society during that time when everything was dramatized and tension built and manipulated. So that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.